You're listening to the 49 Carats Podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats Podcast. I'm your host, Steph. It is Tuesday, August 1st. Another day of 49ers training camp. We're on day 6. And joining me to talk all about it today is someone who has been at some of the practices throughout camp, Ryan Hensley. How you doing today, Ryan?
I'm doing great. I'm so bummed out. I got FOMO from not being there today, but the last 2 days, Sunday and Monday, it was great to be there, and I'm anxious to learn about what you saw today.
Yeah, the FOMO is real. Like that's how I felt the first few days that I missed. And I even convinced myself, you know what? I think I like just seeing people's tweets, because then when I'm there, I don't get to see what people say about everything. So I try to convince myself I was okay with it. But no, it's definitely a different energy being there and seeing these guys in person. You get a lot of context that, quite frankly, I don't fault anyone for leaving out context in tweets. It's just so hard to get all of that in a certain limited number of characters. What I would encourage people to do is anyone that you follow on Twitter who talks about camp, listen to their podcasts, listen to their YouTube channels because usually they do give that extra context, right? So that's what we're hoping to do here for you today to talk about day 6. And I want to open up with not about, the quarterbacks. We will get to the quarterbacks here shortly, but I do want to talk about Taco Charlton, because the 49ers did sign him this morning, is when we heard the announcement. He was signed to a 1-year deal, former Cowboys player, defensive lineman. He was out there already in camp. He was wearing number 77, and he looked good. He looked really good. He made a number of plays out there today. He had a would-be sack. He had a tackle for loss. He won several one-on-one reps. I was, quite frankly, just a little blown away that in his first day, he was making that big of an impact. So it was nice to see him out there. He's very lean, lean. I almost thought too lean. So I was like, okay, let's see how he does. But he looked quick. So I guess excited to see what he can do, at the rest of camp and preseason. And if he strings together days like he had today, he might make the 53, even though he joined late.
Yeah. I love a guy named Taco. I'll tell you that much. For sure. Yeah, and it's interesting. He signed on Tuesday, Taco Tuesday. Also 77. I bet you he doesn't keep that number if he makes the 53. But yeah, no, I'm excited to hear about him. I think he had 11 and a half sacks come his last previous season. I don't know if that's correct, but that's what I heard. So that's great. These pass rushers are really thinning out nowadays. It's really about speed for a lot of these guys. And so, I'm excited that they added one. I thought, coming into this, they were probably very confident with Drake Jackson. And when I was at camp, I was thrilled with what I saw in Drake Jackson, but you can never have enough pass rushers on the team. And so it sounds like this is a good addition. And it does sound like he's going to make the team if he continues to play like today. That's great to hear.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be concerned about Drake Jackson at all. I don't think this is any kind of indictment on him. I simply think with Bosa still not being out there, which, that's another topic right there. But, with Bosa being out, I think you definitely want to have enough guys that you can rotate, between third string, and whatnot in these practices. So
can I interject? Because you brought up Bosa not being out there. I feel like this is the perfect opportunity for a Bosa video. I've been thinking about this for the last 2 days. So
you and everyone else.
I'm just encouraging you. That's all.
Yeah, you and everyone else definitely has been highly requested in the last few days.
Okay.
And yes, I'll have to do it. It's weird because I'm not home, and usually I have a little tripod or whatever I could set up to film myself. But I might have to make something happen here soon. So yeah, stay tuned. Stay tuned on that. Wheels are churning. I got ideas in my head. But speaking of Bosa really quickly, Ryan, are you worried at all that he's not out there? And if you were not worried now, at what point would you start to become worried that a deal isn't done yet?
Sure, I think I'm a lot different than a lot of people on this particular subject. To me, Bosa's probably the one guy on the entire team that if he shows up 1 week before our first game, I'll be okay. Like I don't really worry about Bosa. You know he's going to come in perfect shape. Obviously, it would be good to have him there for just team morale in general. And everybody needs to get used to playing football. But Nick Bosa is probably the one guy on this entire team I would not worry about if he missed a lot of training camp. So right now, I'm not worried. I mean, hopefully they sign him. Obviously, he's a huge difference maker. But right now, I'm not worried. I think it's going to be worked out.
Yeah, I'm on the same page. Like I totally agree. Nick Bosa could walk up to, the Steelers game and he'll probably be okay. I think for me, I start to get antsy once the preseason games start. And not because I'm worried about his conditioning. Like we know that's going to be 100% all the time. But, I'm more so worried about a new defensive coordinator. I'm sure there's some little tweaks, some little things that have changed since the last time Nick Bosa was in the building that, maybe he's missing out on that. And I'm sure that Steve Wilkes does have a line of communication with Bosa. I'm sure he's getting, all the plays and all that, all these new wrinkles. But there's part of that, maybe he is losing out of not being there with the guys and being, together as a group. But that's my only concern, and it's not a big concern. So
yeah,
I think it'll get done.
Yeah, I think even with Wilkes, the message for Bosa will probably just to be to pin his ear back and go get the quarterback regardless.
Yeah.
But there are going to be some changes. So yeah, I agree. It's a good point. But ultimately, like you, I'm not worried about this right now.
Yeah, for sure. And honestly, I think it's a great opportunity for guys like Taco and even Drake Jackson, who we've been hearing about and has been doing well. It's good for him to get those extra reps because I think he needs it, not just to prove to the 49ers that okay, he deserves this bigger role, but also to just string together these days so that when the season starts, like he's ready to go and take on that extra workload that he's presumably going to have. So I'm excited for this group of guys. I will say though, and I don't know if you saw this in the practices that you went to, I hadn't heard a lot about Clinton Farrell, but now I'm kind of seeing why. Like he, in one-on-ones at least, he's a little underwhelming. He does get beat out by some of the offensive linemen. I don't know if that's something you saw while you were out there.
Yeah, he was unimpressive. And what was kind of surprising about it is we heard a lot of good things about him in OTAs. And so I thought that was going to transfer over to training camp. But when I watched him, same thing. He was very slow and not explosive, was not having any success on his one-on-ones. And I believe he's also the guy that hit Brock Purdy's arm. So a little space cadet there. Like, don't do that, man. It's kind of disappointing. And maybe that is a big part of why Taco was brought in today.
Who knows? Yeah, that's a good point because it's not that anyone on the defensive line has gotten hurt, really. So I was a little like, oh, why did they choose to bring in a defensive lineman now, right? It always makes me wonder. Who knows? Maybe it could be that. I don't want to speculate too much, but yeah, I agree. I almost feel like Farrell has done better in team periods than he has in those one-on-ones, and not that he's done anything super spectacular. I think already Taco has kind of, outshined him, but I'm not worried about it. Maybe he just needs a little more time.
He didn't look explosive though. It was concerning to me. I was surprised at how slow he looked, to be honest. And in one-on-one, that's when your athleticism really shines, right? When you're in team stuff, you can rely on the people around you, and then that helps out, and you can use your mind more. But one-on-ones, it's really just about your physical capabilities, and I didn't see much from him when I was there.
Yeah. So hopefully he can show up. Pads are on now. It's real. It's getting real. And so hopefully we see a little bit more out of him this week. But, Kinlaw, we've been hearing great things about him. A little quieter today, I think, just because like Taco just for me took a lot of the cake today. But Kinlaw still looked great. I mean, he was still winning some one-on-one reps as well. So I'm excited to see him, of course. And I know, Ryan, you saw him like in the practices you were at, and a lot of those, he was the main attraction on the defensive line, right?
Yeah, I was really impressed. First of all, how physically dominating the guy looks just in general. And this is after losing a bunch of weight and thinning out, and he still just looks like a freaking monster out there. And he was really successful, really fast, explosive from what I saw. It's really good news for the 49ers and Javon Kinlaw that you are seeing this success from him. And I think a lot of, we saw bits and pieces of Kinlaw in the past, and some of the criticism that the coaches were saying publicly about Javon Kinlaw is his pad level, inability to get low. And I always said, I think, it's hard to do when you're having knee issues, right? If your knees hurt, it's really hard for you to get your body low and lower your pad level. And so it sounds like now that he's healthy, he's going to be able to work on that stuff, the pad level stuff. And he looked great, looked explosive. So I'm really pulling for Kinlaw. Hopefully this is a year where he can actually, and it has to be this year, right? Because it's a contract year for Kinlaw. And so it might work out perfect for the guy. Hopefully he has that breakout season that I know he wants and 49er fans want as well.
He's probably going to have a good year as a rotational piece. And then he's probably going to go to like the Jets or, the Texans.
Right.
It's just too easy.
Yeah.
Dude, really quickly, this is not having anything to do with training camp, but I just saw that Jalen Hurd, who had just signed with the Patriots last week, has announced his retirement. So that is crazy. I don't know what.
Wait, what?
He announced his retirement, Jalen Hurd.
Jalen Hurd. Wow.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. He literally just signed with the Patriots.
Okay. You scared me. I thought you said Jalen Hurts. I was like,
no, I know.
The
names are similar enough. When you did the double take, I was like, oh, Hurd. It's like Hurd, not Hurts. Oh, that's insane. But
I wonder what's going on there. He must be struggling. He must be struggling at camp, I would assume.
See, that's the thing with reoccurring injuries. And since we're talking about Kinlaw, I'm glad that as of right now, fingers crossed, he continues to stay healthy, because what we've seen so far with health on his side, it is looking good, people. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned the pad level. I think that's something that I heard on the last 49ers talk. Matt Mayoko mentioned that, Javon Hargrave, his body is so low to the ground and he has a low center of gravity. All of his weight is kind of like in the midsection and below, to where Kinlaw is actually quite the opposite. Now he's a little bit leaner, but he has like a long long legs and a shorter torso. And that makes it a little bit, for Hargrave, it makes it easier to be the low man, and that's how he wins. But for Kinlaw, he has to get a little bit lower, and they made the point that maybe that's why he struggled with his knee so much, because it puts a lot more stress on his knees. But right now that he's slimmed down, it seems like that has benefited him, and it helps him move around a little bit better. But that's the difference. It's so interesting to see how just the natural body types of two players who play the same position can impact the way they play, the way they put stress on their body and things like that. So that was interesting. It was an interesting perspective to me to hear that.
Yeah, and I saw him get a rep. I forget what the Niners were doing, but he was on the end, and I'm wondering if he's actually going to be a better defensive end than the D tackle, just because of his length, right? You almost want those Javon Hargrave type bodies. I mean, you do on the interior. It seems more naturally fit for the position. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering if we're gonna see some reps from him on the edge.
We might, now that he's slimmed down. I think he does kind of have that flexibility somewhat. In fact, I think in one of the one-on-ones today, I think he was rushing off of the edge. Yeah. So that's interesting, right? Mm-hmm. So who knows? Maybe we will see some of that. I think the fact that they've seen his quickness, they're like, oh, let's see what that looks like on the edge, right? Yeah. So maybe I'll keep an eye on that if we see more of that as one-on-ones continue and throughout camp. But look, we've gone nearly 15 minutes without talking about the quarterback position. That's a new record, I think, on the show. Yeah. But let's get to it, right?
All right.
From what I saw today, well, first, let me talk about yesterday, because yesterday I thought was a great day for Lance. And yes, he was the better quarterback so far in that day. I would say that Purdy did not have as bad a day as some people were making it seem. I didn't think like it was a bad day for Purdy at all. And I think Purdy had a solid day today as well. I will say also that today was kind of hell for people who like chart the throws or the completions, because there were so many. There were a lot of penalties. There were a lot of would-be sacks that don't get counted like on the field. Like they keep playing, right? And they keep the quarterbacks throw the ball even when there is a would-be sack, So it's like, do you count that? Do you not? There's a lot of subjectivity to how people look at the quarterbacks and what should be counted and what shouldn't be. There isn't any like official thing that the 49ers put out at the end of practice and say this was a completion, this one wasn't. So today was kind of one of those weird days, because there were a number of would-be sacks that, throughout all of the 11-on-11 periods, throughout all the quarterbacks, right? So that was a little, I guess, challenging when you look at some of the numbers. I guess that's just what I'll point out. But I thought it was a great day for Purdy. It seems like he's getting into a groove with more days. It seems like he's stacking his days and rebuilding that chemistry with his receivers. And I think that's great for him. I thought Lance had a fine day. Like it definitely wasn't a bad day for Lance. But I'd say Purdy had a better day. And then Darnold, to me, was underwhelming. It just seemed like Darnold didn't get a lot of snaps, quite honestly, today. I don't remember how many throws he ended up with, but I think even Allen had more throws than Darnold today, which is
Matt has 11 reps for Darnold and 6 passes, 2 of 6. Matt Mayoka.
Yeah. I thought today was a decent day for Allen.
I guess he was 5 for 5 according to Matt Mayoka. So one less rep, one less passing attempt than Darnold, but a better day than Darnold. Yeah, I mean, I can kind of recap I wasn't there today. I think what a lot of 49er fans need to realize, and it's not being pushed enough out there, is that your completion percentage is probably the least important thing out of all of this, right? Because you can have a great completion percentage and it's all dump offs, right? Like, and what is that really telling you, right? And I'm not saying that's what Brock did. I wasn't there today, but I'm just speaking in general terms, right? If you're making little 3-yard dump offs and you got 8 of them, and now you look like you're 8 of 11 or something like that, I mean, that looks good numbers wise, but it's really, you didn't really do much. So for me, when I'm looking at the quarterbacks, what I'm looking at is, all right, how many bad throws did they have? Like, did they make bad throws, bad decisions? Those are the things that I'm really looking at. And when I was there Sunday, Brock wasn't there, and it was Trey Sam and Brandon Allen. I really don't focus on Brandon Allen, if I'm being honest with you. I really just I focused on Sam Darnold and Trey Lance. Right. And to me on Sunday, Sam Darnold, Trey Lance, both really good days. Statistically, Darnold had the better day. But when I'm looking at like how many mistakes did they make, I saw Trey Lance missed that wide open pass to Debo. So that was the real big mistake I saw from Trey Lance on Sunday. But I also saw Darnold miss a wide open pass to one of the tight ends. So they both had one bad pass, but Darnold kind of won the day because statistically. And then yesterday when I was there, it was opposite. To me, they both were good, but Trey Lance had the better statistical day. And then Brock Purdy yesterday did not, to me, look like the third best quarterback yesterday on the field. It looked like Trey and Sam were ahead of what I saw from Brock Purdy yesterday. But it sounds like today, I did hear 4 sacks, a near interception, but outside of that, he did pretty well. I wasn't there, so I'm just curious if you can break down more of the context, like the bad decisions, those types of things for Brock Purdy today.
So I'll also add to, what you said about, yes, I agree. You can't just look at stats because you do need the context. But I'll also say that, even dump offs can be good. Like we don't know and what's a good decision or not. Like, what if there was a a blitz coming off the edge and he needed to get the ball out quickly? A dump off is great in that scenario. So you got to really look at everything. And there's a lot of things that we seen from the stands, we, hearing from, tweets and whatnot, we don't get, because a lot of that is, okay, what was the read that Kyle Shanahan wanted them to throw to, or, the decision making. Like, I feel like Kyle Shanahan would have the best idea what's a good decision out there, as far as like what's a bad throw because it's inaccurate, or like, you miss the guy, you threw it behind him, something like that. Like, yeah, I think we could see that. But as far as decision making goes, I don't think we really always know. Because
when I mean decision making, I mean covered and uncovered, right? If a guy is completely covered and you pass to him, that's a bad decision. Now, you're right. Like, I don't know what Kyle wants them to be looking at, who their first target is, etc. It's kind of like Trey Lance's. So a perfect example, Trey Lance threw that wheel route to Elijah Mitchell when Drake Jackson dropped back in coverage to get him. I think that was on Sunday. So Trey Lance dropped back. Elijah Mitchell ran a wheel route, and I'm pretty sure that's probably what Kyle wanted, because it was a mismatch versus Drake Jackson. We thought it was a mismatch against Drake Jackson, but for whatever reason, Drake Jackson was just a freak athlete and got back there. So I think Kyle wanted him to throw there based on the matchup that they had. And the pass was perfectly on target. It's just Drake Jackson's defense was phenomenal. So there's a lot of context in this. And I think for fans, it's difficult who are not there on the field, not watching. It's really difficult you just kind of have to listen to a bunch of content creators, hear what they're all saying, consider what their biases may be, and then come to a conclusion on your own. Yeah,
I literally said like the exact same thing this morning on the Bully Ball podcast, where I was doing it with Rob, because that's how you're going to get like the best, or formulate the best decision, or opinion, is from getting all of the information that you possibly can. And the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. And if you see a number of different journalists or content creators, whoever, because now, those are all different things, apparently. When you see them saying somewhat the same thing, that then you can say, okay, like that was true. We can check that as being true, and you can then make an opinion on it. But that's my advice to people, and that's why like I always try to retweet a bunch of different beat writers and content creators.
So this brings up my question for you, because you brought up a perfect point. I watched Grant Cohn's immediate reaction from the day, and he said it was a lot of dinking dunking. He wasn't impressed at all with what Brock Purdy did today. Jesse said it was a good day from Brock. You said it's a good day from Brock. Why do you think it's different, and who's right, who's wrong? Are you guys seeing different things, or what would you say in regard to that?
I don't know, because I think if I'm not mistaken, Grant said the same thing about Purdy yesterday, to where like I thought Purdy was fine yesterday. And there were a lot of dink and dunk, passes. But as I said earlier, like sometimes that is the right thing to do in that moment. Like it really just it depends on the context of the certain play that, is in question. And sometimes we don't always see those things, because sometimes I'm looking at the quarterback and I don't see if there was like a rush coming from the left side of the line. Right. So sometimes we miss those things, but also I think it's just people's opinion. Like, Grant thinks that wasn't a good day from Purdy. I mean, he didn't push the ball downfield. Maybe that's what Grant wants to see at this stage in camp, and he's going to chalk it up as it being a bad day for Purdy. But like that's why I say I think it's good to just get a lot of different opinions on the table, because everyone's going to think a little bit differently, right? Yeah. So,
can I ask you another question about Brock that came to my head today? So I think when you're looking at total numbers, he has 2 less days than all the other quarterbacks, but he does have more interceptions thrown and more near interceptions thrown. And I brought it up that it's rust, and I feel like that's a legitimate, you can call it an excuse or context, but the guy's coming off a UCL injury. And I think it's legitimate to say that he's rusty, both mentally and physically. I don't think that's a cop-out or just an excuse. I think that's legit. So, one, I'm wondering if you think that's a legitimate excuse for those things. And then two, you said it doesn't sound like he looked rusty today. So I wanted you to, give me your take on that. And then three-part question. Sorry, Steph. But how long?
You might have to repeat one of them.
Okay. I think it's legitimate context, right? But I'm wondering what your take is on how long is that acceptable context or excuse, or what do you want to call it?
Yeah, I do think it's fair to say that Purdy has some rust. This camp, starting last week, was the first time that he was throwing to these guys since the NFC Championship game. That is really a long time. And I am seeing some people say, well, Trey Lance was also hurt. He's also coming back from an injury. Why aren't we using that same excuse for him? My answer to that would be, well, Lance has been throwing to these guys since OTAs and, probably maybe a little bit before that too. So he's had the opportunity to where I think there is a difference there. It maybe is the thin line between the two, but to me, it's a clear difference. And also, to your point, Purdy's injury was to his arm, right? So shaking the rust off the arm, not just with the chemistry, but that too. It seems like everything's going well with Purdy and him rehabbing and him getting cleared and whatnot. But still, there's some shaking of the rust. And I also think the mental hurdle of it too, which, doesn't get talked about enough, which, one thing that Rob mentioned earlier in Bully Ball this morning was, maybe it probably wasn't a good decision by Farrell to hit Purdy the way he did. But at the same time, now Purdy knows, oh, okay, I could maybe
be all right.
Stand a hit. Yeah, exactly. And it's probably good to get that out of the way sooner than later, because you don't want those thoughts getting in a quarterback's head when they go out there and try to play a game, right? So now, he probably feels a little more confident in that. But anyway, going back to what you were saying, how long is the rust, I guess, acceptable? Well, let me answer the second question, because I think the second question was that I thought it looked like he was shaking the rust off today, right? Or that he has been. I think he has been, and it's gradual, right? We bring up the fact that, there are dump offs, and that's fine because those are your safe throws. But even dump offs are a completion, and completions are better than incompletions or staying in the pocket for too long, so while you do want him to continue progressing, I think that is coming gradually. I saw a lot of plays where he's going through his progressions, and, he's hitting the second, third progression guy. So I think those are strong signs that he's the same guy he was before the injury, because the processing is still there. His confidence is still there. So to me, those things aren't really rusty, but it's more so maybe some of the chemistry he has with those guys. But that being said, I still feel like he's hitting some of the throws that are there. I think with more work, he's just going to get more consistent with it, though.
Okay. And then how long, let's say he does seem rusty. How long before you're like, hey, no more of that? Is it a month? Is it 2 weeks? Or is there a certain time frame? How do you feel about that?
I don't know if there's for me, I don't think it's a certain time frame, just because right now I see with each practice, I feel like it's getting a little bit better. So that's all you can ask for, right? If it wasn't getting better, then I would be ooh, I don't know. But as long as it's getting better, I feel like by week 1, he'll be fine, Okay. So, and I also made the point that, last year in camp, I didn't think he looked good in camp last year, and look what he did when he had the opportunity, right? So maybe he's a different quarterback when he practices versus, him actually being in the game.
He's a gamer. I've called him that before.
Gamer, yeah. For sure. The game comes natural to him. And, maybe in camp or in practice, there's some other things you try or you work on that maybe you wouldn't in a game necessarily. So I think that could be some of what we're seeing, but I'm not too worried about it. I mean, he has great chemistry with CMC, I'll tell you that. And I think Debo has looked great with him as well. So I'm not worried about it. I think he'll be fine for week 1.
Good.
I don't think he's still looking too rusty.
Good to hear.
Yeah, and so I mean, I thought it was a fine day by the quarterbacks, nothing too crazy. It wasn't like yesterday where we were like, like Trey Lance had his best day. Like today was a little quieter in that regard, where I don't think anyone was like, oh my God, they lit it up, but it's a fine day, for these guys. And for Lance, I think it's good because yesterday having a good day, I didn't see him have a bad day today. And I think that's good because that you can stack your days. You could be a little more consistent. And
why? Who do you think had the best throw today?
The best throw of the day? Let's see. Let me go through my notes. I mean to star some of these, like some of the best throws. I need to like start starring some of them to so that I can like quickly pull them up.
Sure.
Let's see if my writing isn't too. I will say that Ambry Thomas, was getting picked on quite a bit.
I heard
as
that,
I think he has been since he's been in the league. Let's see.
I don't know if Ambry's going to make the team, honestly.
I don't think he should. I don't even know if he should make it to the preseason, quite honestly.
Especially with Jameson, who's shown up big. And Jameson has special teams kick returner, punt returner flexibility as well. So I think he might be in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a shame because his rookie year, he kind of flashed, and everyone thought he was going to be a guy, and then he's just kind of disappeared.
He flashed for like a couple weeks, though. Like it wasn't nothing crazy, but for some reason. Look, let's see. So I think one good play, like Purdy had the only touchdown of the red zone period. I thought it was he scanned the field really quickly, and he found Debo in the middle for the touchdown. So I liked that because he was very quick to look through all the progressions, found Debo, hit him with the touchdown. Let's see. Usually when I say, Allen had a really good throw. There was a guy open underneath. I believe it was the tight end on a leak, but he didn't take that. That would have been like the easy throw, right? That would have been a Jimmy Garoppolo throw. He threw 10 plus yards to Tay Martin on a dig. That was a nice throw. Let's see.
Tay Martin seems to be looking pretty good. I've actually been impressed with Tay Martin, Chris Conley, Tay Martin, Chris Conley, and Danny Gray have all kind of showed up to me when I was there.
Yeah, they've had their moments, and I think the opportunities that they get being limited. I think that's kind of like all you ask for, right?
Yeah.
So Purdy, he had in one of the first 1-on-1 periods, 11-on-11 periods, had a quick throw to Ayuk to the right sideline. That was against Ambry, but I thought that was a pretty good throw. Then he hit Debo on a crosser again against Ambry Thomas. I almost feel like Ambry Thomas gives these quarterbacks like a false sense of sense of like confidence,
right? Because I heard they dumped the guy. I forget the guy's name. They released the corner that Ayuk was eating up. Remember that day, the big day from Sam Darnold, which was Sunday.
Yeah, was it like Avery?
Yeah, I forget his name. Avery something, but he was the guy that was covering Brandon Ayuk when Sam Darnold was just going off, and he's out of here.
They're like, no more.
Yeah, they're like, I'm good, man. Well, you mentioned Sam Darnold had a bad day. It sounds like Brock had a good day. Trey had a good day, but Sam Darnold not so much.
He was just underwhelming, and he didn't have a lot of reps. It was kind of weird. I know they said like what you said 6, right? That
That's
he had 6 throws.
Yeah, 6, 2 of 6.
Yeah. So it was just it felt like a weird day for him. There were a lot of runs, in his snaps that he got to. Let me see. I'll read some of what I have for Darnold. So the first 11-on-11 periods, I believe there were 2 runs on that, so he didn't even get a throw. Then he got in his next session, he hit Debo over the middle. It was like 10 to 12-ish yards. Then next play, pocket collapsing, hit as he threw, short and incomplete to the tight end. I didn't see what tight end. And then a handoff to the running back. Now we're in the second 11 on 11s. Let's see. Another run. Then there was a would-be sack. I believe it was either 96 or Odom. Again, it was a blitz. So, but they still play through that, right? So he did technically complete that to Tay Martin, but it didn't count. Like I'm sure a lot of people who are tracking, keeping tally of the completions, they didn't count that one. So, or maybe they did. I don't know, but that would have been
just didn't do much, right?
Not a whole lot. There was another play. This was in red zone where he targeted Latu and it bounced off of Latu. I feel like Latu should have caught it. I know. He's having the yips with these drops. It bounced off of Latu. Then it bounced to the defender. I believe it was 51. I don't remember who that is off the top of my head right now, but. And then it bounced back to Latu and it was like dropped again. So it was like it kind of bounced a few times and no one got it. And then he was almost picked by 53 after that. It was a somewhat rough day.
Latu, just to speak on Latu real quick, and I saw you tweet that he dropped one today, and I was disappointed because Latu is advertised as not explosive. And when I watch him, he definitely is. He's getting open. He's fast. He's explosive, but he can't catch the damn ball. He needs to get on the jugs machine because from an explosive standpoint, he looks like he could be somebody, but he got to be able to catch the ball. He can't fumble. I think he had a fumble and a bunch of drops. And so far, he's unable to catch the ball. And if he can fix that, he could be somebody, but that's going to be a big problem if he doesn't work that out.
Yeah, I mean, that is definitely something I would like to see him improve on. I mean, yeah, he could get open because he is getting some of these targets, right? But he has to capitalize on them. And then actually, Braden Willis today caught a couple of passes in 11 on 11s, I believe, from Darnold and Allen. But that was nice to see because, to this point, I think the rookie tight ends have been, you haven't heard too much from them. All we've heard are about the Latu drops, and that's not ideal. So
yes.
I think with time they'll continue to get peppered with some more targets and hopefully, get a feel for getting open, at this level. We got to remember that too. Like these guys for some guys, I think there's a bit of a shock of, wow, I'm not getting open as easily as I used to, right? Because now you're in the NFL and guys are much faster. They can stick to you better. So there could be some of that. So you got to bring your best route running, every one-on-one rep, every play, right? To be able to get open. And so I think they'll learn that. And I think they'll get better as they go on.
Could be nerves for Latu, right? This is a big stage he's on, right? The other question I wanted to ask you real quick is, any fumbles from Jordan Mason today? Because my guy's been disappointing me lately. Like I was pulling for him big time and he keeps fumbling. How about today?
No fumbles from him today. Second day in a row, no fumbles.
Yeah.
Hasn't fumbled since the pads came on. So that's great for Jordan Mason. In fact, he looked great today. I mean, he's always a hard runner. He never goes down. I mean, he probably loves training camp because no one can actually tackle him. So he's just going to keep going as long as, no one tackles him. And I love that about him. So yeah, he looked impressive today, as did TDP. I thought TDP just looks very decisive out there. And, he's kind of a one cut kind of dude. And it's been impressive. He's pretty quick.
That's what you need on this team as well. And I heard Laburn is doing good, but it sounds like if TDP and Laburn are both doing good, they're probably going to try to sneak Laburn on the practice squad because TDP is second-year guy. So sounds like he's going to make the roster. Yeah, I know people were concerned about it coming into the training camp.
Which, I think the only reason that people were concerned about it is because we saw what happened with Trey Sermon. And also, like, this running back group is so deep right now. But TDP has looked great. I don't see anything out of the top four, running backs that would lead me to believe that any of those guys deserve to be cut. So that being said, not that Kalen has been bad, but just based on, him being an undrafted free agent, you want to be able to stash him. You don't want a situation like last year where you were kind of forced to keep Jordan Mason around because he looked so good in preseason. You couldn't risk to have him on the practice squad. So, which in hindsight, they were probably thankful for that. But, I think now that you have 4 guys who are really good, I think that Kalen Laybourne probably better suited for the practice squad. So I don't know. I would hide him in the preseason if I were them. We'll see.
Yeah, I think John Lynch, when he was asked a question about it, and you could tell he's like, I'm not going to talk about him because they don't want it to get out there that he's doing good. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to risk, because everyone looks at 49ers running backs like, who are they going to cut this time? Like,
right.
Let's
right,
get him.
exactly. Yeah.
So you don't want that situation.
Yeah, makes sense.
But
anyone else jumped out at you today? Who else jumped out at you today?
I told myself I was going to look at the linebackers and the offensive linemen a little bit more. And so I did. I thought McKivitz was looking great in the one-on-ones. Like he holds up very well. He was winning reps. And I'm not one of those people who were concerned about McKivitz going into this offseason and whatnot. Like, I think he's going to be fine for this offensive line. I think this offensive line is going to be better than it was last year. But I do get a lot of questions about how's McKivitz look? How does he look? So I looked at him today. He looks good, people. He looks fine. Jalen Graham was getting a lot of questions too about him and how he's looking. He's great in coverage. He's really sticky in coverage. And I think that's good. In fact, let me see. I think one of Darnold's, I need to write down like everyone's jersey number because
it's really hard. It's really hard.
I know all the, and I don't have time to write people's names, so I'm just writing numbers, and I'm like, wait, who's number 40?
I got a question for you because I was one of those people that doubted Colton McKivitz coming in. I was one of those guys.
Okay,
right? I was down and out, right? But when the first thing I noticed, my first day there, is like, damn, this dude's actually pretty built. A lot bigger and stronger than I remember. So that was good. And then I saw him in one-on-ones, and I saw him on 11-on-11s, and he looked good. And so I was very happy about it. I posted about it yesterday on Twitter. So you reinforcing that he had another good day is good for me. That makes me excited to hear. Were they doing the 11-on-11s on the bleacher side this time, or was it on the far side? Because yesterday,
it was on the close side to us. Yeah. Yesterday, it was on the far side.
Much better, yeah, that's way better. So you got a really good.
They switch every day.
Yeah.
So tomorrow, or Thursday, will probably be on the far side, but that's why I got my binoculars.
Yeah, and so a new thing happened today. I'm not one on the conspiracy theory that CMC didn't want to play with Trey Lance or that Kyle Shanahan was intentionally doing it, right? But it was cool that today I heard Trey Lance made a pass to CMC. Is that accurate? And what was it?
Oh, I don't. I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, somebody posted that, so I was curious if you caught that. Yeah, so now that's behind us.
Yes, to this point, I hadn't seen him, and it was weird. Like, I thought it was weird, honestly. But yeah, I'm glad that we got to see that today. I saw a lot of Mason and TDP with Lance for the most part. But yeah, I don't see in my notes, but sometimes I don't always see the running back. I'm just like, oh, is a run or is a toss or something like that. But
can I ask you a crazy question?
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask Grant tonight because I'm supposed to be on the Grant at 5:00. But in my head, I was like, let me ask these guys this question and see what their response is. So my question is, this is a crazy question. If it's too crazy, just say, shut the hell up, Ryan. Okay. Right. But I'm really curious. If Brock Purdy, Trey Lance, Sam Darnold, Brandon Allen, you never heard of them before. They all cost the same amount of money. And all you can base it on is what you've seen this year. There's no history on them. Who jumps out as that guy to you?
That's tough. I don't know if there's, in the grand, scheme of the entire training camp so far, if there's anyone who has separated themselves enough for me to say, like, that's the guy. I think, like, more or less they'd be kind of equal. Brandon Allen, I'd probably have, at the end, just because, like, also the sample size, we haven't gotten to see a ton of him. Brock would be up there just because, like, I do think he's some of that chemistry that he has. I know he's rusty, but some of that chemistry that he has is still there with these guys and with the starters. So he does have some good plays. That's a tough question, Ryan. I don't like that you asked me that.
Yeah.
But honestly, like I don't think that anyone has really separated themselves enough. I will say that I think Lance's day yesterday, and I don't. It's hard for me to say because I didn't go to all the other practices, so I wasn't there at some of the practices last week. So I would just go off of what
off 2 days.
heard.
That's not really enough. Yeah.
It's not really enough.
Yeah.
But I thought Lance's practice yesterday was one of the strongest of camp by any quarterback. I think, out of, the 3 or 4, whatever that's worth. But again, I wasn't there at the practices, last week. So kind of hard for me to say.
Yeah. Okay, cool. That's fair. I just wanted to put you on the spot and ask you. Yeah.
Yeah, you did. You put me on the spot.
Yeah.
But, I don't think I got in trouble on this.
No, you did good. You did good. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but no, I mean, this has been a great episode. Anyone in the comments, is there anyone that you either want me to focus on for Thursday or someone you were curious about today? Let me know. But I think for the most part, we've touched on just about like all the players that I thought were notable today. Definitely going to keep an eye on Taco because he looked good today. I'm going to see if that keeps up.
Yeah. I do have a question for you. One more, if I can.
Yeah, let's go.
I love your perspective. So one thing that surprised me. I'm watching practice, and I'm watching Kyle Shanahan throughout practice. Mm-hmm. And the only time he was hands-on was during the 11-11s, and he's calling plays. Yep. The rest of the time, like he starts to practice, he's like playing catch with his kids, and then he's talking to people on the sideline, joking around with Debo. They do this defensive drill where he warms up the defense with ball boys and he plays quarterback. Mm-hmm. And outside of that, like I didn't see him like coaching guys up. He really relies on the assistants to do that. And maybe Kyle's doing that in the film room. But I never seen him like stop, and like started coaching the guys up when they make a mistake or anything like that. I'm wondering, did that surprise you, or is that what you expected? Or did you notice that? Or was he different today?
I saw that last year. I don't think it really surprised me because I think I already had the sense that he was that kind of, coach. He is pretty hands-off. And I think he lets his assistant coaches, who he has handpicked those guys to coach up their respective positions, and he kind of leaves it to them. Mm-hmm. In his mind, like I think he sees himself as the offensive coordinator still, and who has some extra responsibilities. I don't think he really sees himself as someone who's responsible for coaching up guys. Like I think he sees the position coach. That's your job to do. And I do think though that there's a lot that we probably don't see, right? In an 11-on-11 period, that's like a real game situation, or at least that's what you want to simulate. So you're not going to sit there, pull your guy off to the side and be like, hey, this, and this, because you wouldn't do that in a real game anyway. You wait till, you study film the next day and you look through all of the plays and you say, look, you could have done this a little bit better and whatnot. So, I don't worry about it too much. I think there's a lot that happens in the film room that we don't see. And I think that's where Kyle Shanahan is probably most hands-on, and as well as, when they have team meetings and things like that, and they're going through plays. So yeah, that's just how he is, that on the field during practices, he isn't very hands-on. You look at a guy like Steve Wilkes, who's very hands-on, and in particular, so far, he's been super hands-on with the secondary. Like I don't think I've even seen him with the other position groups at all. He's almost like the defense. I mean, the DB coach. Yeah, he's like the DB coach. He's out there like coaching them up, and he's in every one of their drills. So that's different, right? And so I think that's also why, Kyle has never worried about the defense. He lets the defensive coordinator coach the entire defense, he doesn't worry about it one bit. So again, like, I don't think he sees himself as, yes, he is the head coach, but I don't think he feels like he has that extra responsibility of having to coach up everyone. He leaves it up to the positional coaches.
Good. Okay, cool. I wanted your take on that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I know some people don't like that. I do appreciate coaches that are very hands-on. But everyone has their different coaching styles, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if I could say one is right over the other.
Yeah.
It's just whatever works for that coach and whatever works with the group of players that you have as well. So
yeah, I think that's a fair take. I remember Bill Walsh was very hands-on, but Kyle Shanahan's different. Doesn't mean it's bad.
Yeah,
it's just different. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But that was a great question. Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, because it is something that I've seen people mention a lot, or people like worry about it, like, oh, like, why isn't he like coaching up his quarterbacks? He should be doing that. But I think I understand why he doesn't do that in the heat of the moment, in that practice setting during team drills. Like, you want your guy to be focused on the next play. Like, you finish one play, okay, now we're on to the next one, and that's kind of how he sees it too. Like, okay, now let's call the next one. So yeah, it's a different approach, but that's Kyle, man.
That's Kyle. That's Kyle.
That's
All
Kyle.
Right, well,
oh, really quickly. Yeah. Really quickly though. Jake Moody. I was able to sneak in a video of Jake Moody in one of his kicks today, and it's circulating a little bit. He had room to spare on that one. He booted that one.
Dude's got a boot.
And he's been, from all the reports I've seen, I don't think he's missed anything in camp so far, right?
I think so. Someone reported I think Roland said he missed one, but he does have a boot. I mean, it's okay to miss one, Yeah. I mean, I think that's one thing I think fans need to realize is every quarterback in the NFL is going to miss throws. Every kicker is going to miss kicks. Every defensive player is going to miss tackles. Like, sometimes I feel like the standard is a little too high, especially for certain players. Like, I see it a lot with Trey. Like, oh, he missed a pass. It's crazy. Like, every quarterback misses, right? Even in the same practices, you'll see Trey Lance miss. So I feel like everyone just needs to realize that these guys are not robots. They're human beings, and they're all going to have misses. They're going to have bad days. They're going to have good days.
Yeah, I mean, and kicker's one of those thankless jobs. Kind of like offensive line too. Like, I would feel like Mike McGlinchey got a lot of heat anytime he made a mistake, but no one appreciated the plays where he did do good, right? So, that kind of goes for all positions. But yeah, glad you pointed that out as well. But Jake Moody, I mean, he was drafted in 3rd round, so that's why there's little room for I guess any forgiveness if he were to make any misses. But that's why, like, I do like posting about Moody when he does well, because I want people to eventually come around to that pick. At the end of the day, he's on the team, and no matter where they drafted him, like, I do want him to do well. So it's good to see that he has such a strong leg. And yes, he is going to miss some, but knowing that he can make these kicks from so far away, it's like, I think we're going to see less punts and probably, more field goals, with this team. And maybe, like, Kyle's still not going to be very aggressive on 4th down.
Yeah. Oh, one more question. They keep coming up. I'm sorry, Steph.
You got to get me on your show pretty soon, I guess.
Yeah. I need to. I really need to. I'm not going live today because I was doing a show with you and then Grant. So I'm like, I don't need to do my own because I'm going to do it over here. But Jalen Moore goes down a little bit.
Yes.
And then, so we got Trent Williams, Colton McKivitz, Jalen Moore is our main swing tackle. After that, it's pretty sketchy. Are you worried about tackle depth on this team?
Well, for one, I don't think, we don't really know what happened with Jalen Moore. It looked like something up with his knee. He did get carted off and he walked off gingerly. The cart being out is not a huge concern. It's just way easier to, I mean, they're not going to walk all the way to the locker room from the practice field. It's just so far. So that's more why you hear all these reports about the cart coming out. Same thing about like Joe Burrow and a lot of other cases we've heard. But anyway, yeah, there isn't a lot of tackle depth really. But at the same time, I think that's when you have to look to your, maybe below the line depth that you have. So some of these guys like Leroy Watson, I think he filled in, if I'm not mistaken.
He did.
So yeah, that's where your depth really has to step up. And yeah, maybe you got to go a little deeper into your bag to get that depth. But they have guys on the roster, and that's where positional versatility comes in as well, because some of these guys that they have drafted do have that positional versatility. And why do they do that? Because in situations like this, when guys get hurt, okay, you can fill in here. Maybe that's not your main spot, but you do have experience in it. Let's see how you do. And that's just how those things naturally take place. So for one, I don't know. We don't know the extent of Jalen Moore's injury, so I'll wait to hear that before I press the panic button on any of the tackle depth. But it's time for guys to step up, and that's the name of the game in camp and throughout the season as well. If your name is called because of injury, you have to be ready and you have to step up. So we'll see who kind of can make a name for themselves in the meantime.
Yeah, and I think Feliciano has played. He has played left tackle. He's never played right tackle, but he has played left tackle before. And I really think he has a good potential to be a solid backup at probably all 5 positions. I think he can handle it. So, yeah, good point. We'll see how it plays out. Hopefully Jalen Moore's okay.
Yeah, we'll see. And, the team's off tomorrow, I believe. I don't know if they're off tomorrow or if it's just a non-fan day. But we won't be there tomorrow. So we'll be back at it for Thursday practice. So
cool.
Yeah, but I'm gonna keep an eye on the tackle depth, see if Jalen Moore is out there, see if we hear anything more about Jalen Moore. And yeah, hopefully that's all right and he's okay. But Ryan, thank you so much for joining me today. This was fun. Got to get you on the show more often. And yeah, I'm sad I didn't get to meet you in person, but maybe game this season will make it happen.
It was sad. I was looking over at you. I was watching. I'm like, there's Steph right there. I just can't get to her. Yeah, but yeah, we'll make it happen in the future for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Let everyone know where they can find you and your content.
Yeah, I'm Ryan G. Hensley everywhere on social media, and then my channel, I think it's at Ryan G. Hensley, but the channel name is the Ryan G. Hensley Show. So please subscribe if you haven't yet. I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, make sure you guys subscribe. He's also on Grant's channel quite a bit, so make sure you guys follow Grant too. He's also at camp every day, also has great analysis, as does Ryan. So make sure you guys also subscribe to 49 Carats podcast and like this video if you have not yet, folks. But for now, have a good rest of your Tuesday. Peace.